In a fast-paced digital world with rapidly evolving technologies, the nature of transatlantic security is changing. NATO recognises this changing dynamic and is adapting to the current security threats. To ensure competitiveness and comparative advantage vis-à-vis adversaries, NATO is doubling its efforts to work more effectively with the private sector to capture technological and innovative capabilities to remain effective in the face of future challenges. This process was originally started at the 2010 Lisbon Summit. At the 2019 Leaders Summit, the NATO-2030 process was launched. One of the key pillars of transatlantic security is cooperation between NATO and the private sector. In November 2020, NATO and GLOBSEC partnered to create NATO2030 Private Sector Dialogues with GLOBSEC. The dialogues look to deepen the involvement of the private sector across the transatlantic sphere, bringing together both traditional and non-traditional stakeholders. Looking to the future, NATO's objectives should focus on resilience, future-proofing policies and strategies, adaptation, generating new capacities and foresight. Why is the collaboration between NATO and the private sector so important to alliance security?
I was very glad to have organized together with GLOBSEC a series of dialogues between NATO and the private sector. The alliance has a long tradition of working with industry, but strengthening NATO's cooperation with the private sector is crucial for the alliance's ability to successfully tackle current and future security challenges and threats.
6 virtual engagements over a 15-hour period, 1 high-profile launch conference and 5 follow-on closed dialogues, 129 experts from 27 countries. The future of warfare and the role of new and emerging technologies. The private sector's contribution to alliance security. Sustainable defence innovation and the fight against climate change. The future of the internet in a contested geopolitical environment. Transatlantic cooperation on ethical deployment and governance of new technologies. Critical infrastructure and security of supply chains. These are the primary outcomes the dialogues generated. Creating more opportunities and channels for structured dialogue between the private sector and NATO to share insight, risk assessment and expertise. Where applicable, NATO and the private sector should actively promote ethical approaches to transatlantic problem solving and policy solutions that preserve democratic values. NATO should continue to enlist the expertise of the private sector to help maximise the use and interpretation of datasets to achieve mission success and better over-the-horizon thinking. NATO should continue to support the private sector in generating EDT's innovation and capabilities, while simultaneously playing an active role in international norm and standard setting of these technologies. NATO and the private sector can enhance cooperation to build societal resilience and empower individuals to recognise and counter false narratives as well as disinformation, to mitigate the threat of weaponized information landscape and solidify transatlantic solidarity. NATO and the private sector can work together to explore the effectiveness of integrating more green-friendly technologies at home, as well as on missions abroad to raise operational effectiveness, achieve success and contribute to climate mitigation efforts. Improving the protection of critical civilian infrastructure and supply chains could be better accomplished by updating current NATO standardisation agreements to reflect the current state of private sector technology and further add preparedness to a variety of contingencies. NATO should look to integrate the private sector into more tabletop exercises and simulations to source more critical foresight and gather more intelligence.
I believe that these NATO-GLOBSEC dialogues have been of great value to both private and public sectors. To the private sector, they have provided an additional and intimate communication platform with NATO. From my experience in participating, I think they have confirmed the increased need for cross-sector communication between both traditional and non-traditional stakeholders. Also, they have facilitated a transfer of knowledge and experience in many areas, ranging from applications of artificial intelligence and emerging tech in the battlefield to increasing innovation across the Atlantic. I'm confident that these dialogue takeaways will be instrumental in increasing the alliance's security and resilience capabilities. I think they will allow NATO to design and implement future-proof policies capable of dealing with the diverse threats of the future.
For more information about the NATO2030 Private Sector Dialogues with GLOBSEC, visit www.globsec.org.